Hello and welcome to Ms. Behavior. I'm Colette,
And I'm Kurt.
and we are thrilled that you're with us today. We have a great episode coming up with an interview with a student that we met through a conduct hearing who ended up becoming a really important member of our conduct team. You were not able to be there, so you got to listen kind of like our listeners to Yoanna.
Once again, I'm jealous that I wasn't there because it was such a great conversation. And one of my favorites was I could hear the Old Main bells in the background. It was very collegiate, so nicely done.
It was. We sat outside. You can probably hear the wind whistling through the microphones. But it was just a beautiful day on campus. And I hadn't seen Yoanna in quite a few months. She's still a student there. What were some of the takeaways for you?
I think it was a good reminder for me about the intersection of race, ethnicity, and culture, and how that can play into how a student experiences the conduct system. She explored that, I think, really elegantly a couple of different times. So that was, for me, a specific thing, and I think just more broadly, just how much she got out of that experience. So much education that, you hope, I think we all hope that the process is educational, but really strong evidence that for her, it had a profound impact on her. But I did find myself thinking, of course she ended up being on the conduct committee because she met with you. Not surprising.
We clicked, and it was so random because she wasn't supposed to meet with me. It was for kind of a lower level conduct case, but she had opted to up the ante and go to the dean of students for some of the reasons you just said. She was so insightful about it.
And I loved at the end, it sounds like she has not landed on a career path, but in talking about the things that how she wants to spend her time and energy, I hope if you talk to her again soon, you can convince her to go into student affairs and work in a community college setting, because for me, that's where I found my passion in higher education. I think it checks off several of the boxes that she's going to mention at the end of this episode.
Just by almost coincidence, Yoanna met our previous guest, Erin Kaplan. This semester, Erin said the exact same thing, like, can we get Yoanna to go into this field? I have talked to Yoanna multiple times, and yeah, it would be whatever she does is going to be amazing.
Yes.
So I still have conspiracies in mind to just get her in front of as many conduct people as possible to encourage inclusion of students.
I think you just need to casually attach this podcast to an email and send it out. I think that's all it's going to take.
Nice. Well, let's reveal for everybody and go right into our episode now. Yoanna Lee, welcome to the Misbehavior Podcast.
Hi. Oh, it's called the Misbehavior Podcast. I love that.
We are really excited. You're our first student. We've been talking about having a student on since we even conceived of this idea. So why don't you introduce yourself for the listeners? And we always start with a little icebreaker of tell us a time that you got in trouble.
So, hi, I'm Yoanna Lee, and I'm currently a senior at Franklin and Marshall College. I'm a double major in cognitive science and anthropology, and my favorite ice cream flavor is black sesame and matcha. It's just something that comes up. Me being from California, I realize nobody knows what that is, so I always just kind of bring it up.
Where would I get a sesame and matcha ice cream around Pennsylvania?
You could probably go to an Asian grocery store in the ice cream aisle and probably find either black sesame or matcha, or honestly, that's the closest instant thing I can think of.
I love it. I'm writing this down. I really am.
Yeah.
All right. And do you feel comfortable sharing a time that you might have gotten in trouble in your own life? And we ask this because we just want to normalize that everyone has stuff.
To preface, I was which will probably make it more interesting, I was also on the conduct committee with you,
Yay!
Colette.
Yep.
So I was on the, and I was just helping with all of that. But before all of this had happened, I had been caught smoking weed in my dorm room, and that was a little embarrassing to say the least. Especially because I was also having a rough day, and I am a medical user from California. So yes, there were a lot of other factors involved. Either way, I was smoking weed in my room. And this was like the first time that it had like really happened inside of the room setting. And of course, 4 HAs or RAs, if you're in other schools, came to knock on my door. And I was like, oh, who is this? And I opened the door and there were literally 4 HAs staring, being like, are you guys smoking weed? Because it smells like weed. And I remember not knowing how to react. I was like, I guess. Let me explain. Either way, that with conduct and everything else going in the school, I did end up getting in trouble. So because of that, I was not able to be part of the conduct committee for I think a year or a semester.
Okay.
And then I was able to join, but that was a really interesting moment in my life, especially because I had never really gotten in trouble in my life, especially from like an academic standpoint. So I thought my life was over at that point. I was like, I'm going to get suspended. My mom's, my mom is going to find out for the first time. So it was like this whole little loop. But looking back, I realized a lot of students do this. It's quite normal. Not to say it's should be done all the time, but I think being in conduct and having gone through that experience, I can look back and not be that embarrassed about it or anything. It's just kind of a funny story at this point. Yeah.
For me, it's all interesting,
Yeah.
but that your reaction at the time, even right when it started, was, let me explain. Because I'm not sure every system would let you explain, to be honest.
Yep.
And so, is it okay if we talk about what happened next?
Yeah.
Because we got to meet.
Yeah.
And hopefully you got to explain.
Yeah, I did.
Because every weed case is a different weed case. And you just don't know. So you were coming from a state where it was legal?
Yes. It was legal recreationally and medically. So very different from Pennsylvania, where it's just medically legal right now. And they don't have reciprocity laws as well, meaning that if you have a medical card from another state, Pennsylvania actually does not recognize that. So even if you're to use it, you cannot actually go to a dispensary or legally really smoke marijuana. Yeah.
So I have to go back, Yoanna, on either the first or the second episode of Ms. Behavior. My co-host Kurt and I talked about this situation.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know if you remember this, I called our local congressman.
Yes, I remember.
You inspired that to see if they would help create a pathway for people that were using legally, because there weren't any reciprocity laws or places where you could go.
I could safely smoke. Quite frankly, the safest place I felt in my head at that time was in, the privacy of my dorm. But obviously I knew I was with other people and there could be consequences. I felt that it would be safer than going outside, and being stopped by someone asking why I was smoking weed.
And maybe it was the safest thing. If you were making the choice, like, I am going to choose to do this, it may have been the safest way. And we probably talked about, are there other choices?
Yeah.
That could accomplish what you needed at that time. So how many years ago was that?
I think it was 2 years ago. I think I was a sophomore, maybe first semester sophomore, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then at some point, your name got on my radar again because you had applied to be on our committee on student conduct.
Yeah.
What inspired that choice?
I think so. Coming into student conduct as someone who got in trouble going through the conduct process, I think I had a lot of like misgivings and misunderstandings about what the conduct process would look like and also what the consequences would be. So I had a very like punitive understanding of what that might look like. So I got in thinking, okay, I'm going to be basically judged by a bunch of people of whether what I did was legal or not, or like according to school law or according like not according to school rules, and then just be told an answer with no real room for explanation or anything like that. And I think also, I mean, perhaps it was more of my own self projection, but coming here being like one of the fewer Asian people, and there was a lot of factors where I just felt like with the political climate and how certain schools can be, I'm just screwed. I'm so screwed. There's no getting out of this. But then when I went through the process, I first talked to my dean, my house dean, who typically I found out that this is not a case that normally goes all the way up to the dean of student conduct or affairs. I don't remember. The dean of student affairs.
Students, yep.
Dean of students, because it was supposed to be like a small case if it's weed or alcohol, to my knowledge. But at this point, I didn't know that. I thought this was going straight up. So I had talked to my dean, but she was not really aware of all of the rules that were going on. She was also, although she was a naturalized citizen, she had come from China as well, which has very different culture and ideas of marijuana or even drug use as a whole. So I didn't really feel heard in the way that I wanted to, I felt like. And I had actually asked her if it was possible to take this up.
Really?
Yeah, because I felt like I felt it was a little bit unfair. I didn't really feel heard in the way that I wanted to be heard or understood. And shockingly, she was so sweet about it and said, like, yes, I will let you know this is going like up on the ladder. So, the consequences might be a little bit different now. All that being said, if this is actually what you want, I'd be happy to do that because I can't actually fully answer your questions or meet your needs. And I'm trying to understand you, but I actually don't really. And I never thought I would hear something like that from a dean.
Yeah.
So that was like really humbling for starters. And then I went up to talk to you, and I had never seen you at this point. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, what did I put myself into? This was not the right choice. But I met you, and the first thing that you said was like, hi, how are you? Like, what's your name? How have your classes been? How are you feeling? I was like, what is going on? And we were talking for almost 5-10 minutes about just like classes and everything else. And I think there was a small part of me that was like, is she trying to like make me like lose my guard? There was a little bit of suspicion the whole time.
And the truth is, I am.
Yeah. But I think at the same time, I also felt so humanized. So it was a kind of a weird situation. But once we really started talking, I felt one, it was only you and me. I know I had the option of bringing someone in to support me, but it wasn't like a panel. It wasn't like some sort of judicial system at all. It was very humanizing, one-on-one, just trying to understand exactly what happened, and even fleshing out like school policies, why school policies are a certain way. We had also talked about how FNM is federally funded, even if it's a private school. Just to be able to be told this information in such a transparent way, and then also to be told that you're on my side in some sense, not in terms of supporting what I do, but here to support me as a student and get the best outcome for me, for myself and my well-being, not for the sake of getting an answer for the school, I think really changed my perceptions of what conduct could look like. Especially because all of the stories I've heard from conduct were typically athletes or fraternities or sororities, and they're very much like, yeah, we got shut down, period, no explanation.
We got dinged. That's what I used to hear.
Yeah, or something like that. And then just having that experience, I also got to talk with you. And somehow at the end of this, you had talked about, like, let me actually just call our local congressman. Which I never even could have expected going into this conversation at all.
I think we were looking for ways that you could get your needs met, but within compliance with what the policies weren't going to change.
Yeah.
But some policies are unjust, or I always think policies sometimes have unintended consequences, and they're often made by legislators who are not college people. Yeah. There's so much in what you just said. So we did try to contact the local congressman, and they were not interested. They had bigger priorities, understood, like they have their list of priorities. But at least I feel like we got this on their radar, that medical cannabis is legal in Pennsylvania, but it is so restricted, it can be a barrier to people who need it. So we got to meet, and all of your intuitions were probably right. 'Cause I do meet students, and I can read it on them when I'm being like super warm. And most, I can see their shoulders relax as we talk. And for a few, I see their shoulders go up because they are coming in like, don't break. You got your story. Do not break. So that warmth can sometimes be hard. I was trying to remember because I remembered it was just you and me.
Yeah.
And our residence life staff, we call them house deans. I had brokered a deal with them at one point because they had a role in their residences where they were supposed to be like all things to all of their students. So it took on like a counseling role, a care role, conduct, which I'm not sure was super healthy because the same people who would make call outreaches or care outreaches were the same people that did student conduct. So sometimes students thought a care meeting was getting in trouble, but they were allowed in a hearing to switch it and say, would you like to meet with the dean and I can be your support person going through this. So I'm like, oh, why didn't Yoanna bring her dean? But that makes sense that you just wanted to.
Yeah. I think I felt supported, but also she had been very frank with me to be like, I don't know how I can best support you because I'm not really knowledgeable with something like this and I have not really experienced a situation like this. So I'd be happy to be your support person if you wanted me to. I'm just going to be frank with you. I don't know to what extent or how I can be. And I think for me, even if she hadn't said that, I felt pretty comfortable just wanting to get another perspective or just someone else to hear me, less worrying about the hierarchy, but just trying to get more people to hear me out and see what the temperature of the room or the school or whatever might be like. It did scare me that I was going, quote, a level up. But
and my office was in the big like old main building on campus where students never came unless they were in trouble or there was something very formal. So those are parts of a system that just send a message that we do not intend. I believe she may also have been reading you as Yoanna's not going to stop and she doesn't think what she did is wrong. And you know me, I'm like, I don't believe in right and wrong. Students get to decide what's right and wrong. We just interpret rules. And there may have been some feeling that I was going to fix you. But I think we both learned from each other.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I also came out of that meeting feeling, because there was a part of me that was like, this is so unfair. Like, I shouldn't have, like, why is this happening? This is stupid. But then just coming in, really taking a step back and all that being said, after the meeting, I was still a little bit like, I still got in trouble. Like, why did I have to get in trouble? And it was a little bit frustrating. But even with that, I came out of this meeting of, however, this is not just about me. The school is federally funded. The consequences does fall on just like school administration and staff. My dean is responsible for students' conduct, and it wasn't just me affected. The reason why the HAs came was because my neighbors could smell weed and they were bothered by it, and I was also, it wasn't really mentioned, but I was also thinking about like third-hand smoke and the fact that the place that I'm living in will not just be where I'm living in. Generations of students will live in that same room. So is it actually responsible and okay for me to do this? And there's so many ways that I could argue out of it, but I think I just realized like I still broke the school rules and it does have consequences that like irrelevant of me getting in trouble or not. There's other consequences that I need to think about. And I think I just took it as, it's not the end of the world. I'm not getting suspended. It was an incredible talk. So who am I to even really complain or be really upset about this? It is what it is. Like, this is just what happened. Now I just got to get over it, I guess.
I love that you're thinking about people that you might have impacted. Hopefully, we're thinking about you. Because
Yeah.
at that point, a repeat, you would be taking on tremendous risk. Because at that point, it might be a suspension.
Yeah.
And I hope we would care just as much or more about you. Like, if you're going to make this choice, we have to be really honest about what could happen next. And then trust you to make whatever the best decision is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't believe you're in a place where you can make that decision, make the hard decision for them. In this case, the story arc is that you joined us a year later.
Yeah.
So tell me about that experience. So you joined our, what many schools would call like an honor council. We heard lots of cases together. So what was that like as a student, or just as you as a student?
Hearing, I think I took on maybe like 10 or like almost 12 cases while I was been on the council, which is quite a lot, I think. And I think what was incredible coming out of that was how many people got in there for reasons I never really would have expected.
Oh, like what? Do you remember?
I mean, I knew people were stressed, but also like kind of, it's so easy, I think, to be like, it's the school rules, just don't do it. Why would you do it? Like, yeah, there's reasons that could have triggered it. You were stressed, but still make the right call, right? But, seeing people cry and being like, my mother like got cancer, now she's in the hospital. I didn't have time to spend time studying, but my grades do matter. I can't afford to fail another class. And there's just so much like layer and depth to each problem. Of course, there were some people who just kind of wanted to get out or make an easy shortcut. But I think I realized through all the meetings that those number of people are actually a lot fewer than I would have expected coming in. I thought that would be the majority, just people trying to make shortcuts and just getting in trouble. But it was less so, and so many more people came with a lot of baggage on them, personal baggage, academic baggage, and just they're young, not really knowing how to navigate all of this weight on their own, figuring this out with school. And being told that the decisions that they'll make will have lasting consequences. So to just be there and to hear people, and then to not tell them like what you did was just wrong, period. But I understand why you did that. And actually, I'm not surprised you did that, quite frankly. All that being said, the reality is, we can't do this again. One, because we don't want you to change in terms of your character and things like that. But also with the school, it's not like we're going to change policy for one person. We, as you said, we're there to interpret laws. We're not really there to fix them or change them or add them in. It's not our jobs at all. So to be able to put that into perspective and to teach and tell them like, this is what it looks like. So how can we best support you so that this doesn't happen again? And that you can just get through this hump, whatever that might look like. It was really humanizing. And I think it also kind of came back to me where I was like, yeah, I was in that situation too. And the more people I met, the more kind of everything that happened to me, I just could kind of let it go. And I was like, this really isn't a big deal at all. Like I met Colette. Now she's like one of the people I'm closest mentors. Like I love Colette so much. So it was, I think looking back, that whole year when I came in going into conduct versus when I came out, I felt like a very different person. So I feel really lucky to have actually joined.
And we were
really
lucky.
Good. Yeah, so it was really a privilege to be able to be part of like so many students' lives and whatnot. And funny enough, some of them we would even meet and I would be like, "Are you doing okay?" Like I don't want to like call you out in front of your friends. So I'm not going to say anything, but just like as a peer, because they don't know any better. I'm not. They don't know that I'm part of the honor council or anything like that. So just like, hey, are you doing okay? Like, how's work? I know there was a lot going on like a couple weeks ago, and for them to just some of them to even be like honest with me and be like, I got to be honest, it's been kind of rough. But to be in a place where I can just talk with them was incredible because I would have never talked to them otherwise.
I'm sure you were part of some conversations and hearings where we would say to students, when you see us out on campus, we're going to make eye contact, and it's totally okay to just say hello because we are delighted that we got to meet you. I love that you had that follow-up. I remember you immediately, like first out of the gate with your first case, introduced yourself and said, I was in that seat not so long ago. Was that a conscious choice that you made to be so transparent? Because I think it immediately set the tone that it's okay to have made a mistake.
It was definitely a conscious choice because I think, to my knowledge, I was the only one on the committee who had gotten in disciplinary conduct before at the same institution only a year ago, and then was now part of the committee essentially. So because when I was going into conduct, I would have never expected anyone on the honor committee, the conduct committee, to say that they got in trouble. Like, that's not even really feasible for me. If you got in trouble, you're not going there, period, for whatever reason it might be. So just to establish that this is normal, and you can also be in a place that looks totally opposite too in just a little bit of time, and you don't have to be their ears. I'm not the role model of what you should be. I'm just another example of what it could be if you wanted to. And if you want to after this, you don't need to talk to us ever again. That's fine. And that's with no offense at all. We know this is a hard conversation. But yes, it was very intentional. Although when I first started, it was more of a trial run because I didn't know how well it would actually turn out to introduce myself as someone who got into trouble. But I think, as you said, after a couple of meetings, I realized it actually really changed the tone of the meetings in mostly a positive way. And I realized, okay, this is something I actually need to do every conversation. And following up, I don't think I've ever had a meeting with anyone where I didn't introduce myself as someone who was in their seat, because I felt like that was so important in just breaking the ice and being like, you're human. We're not here to see you as someone who got in trouble. We're here to see you as a student who's really struggling and made a choice that was against school rules for whatever reason or the other. And we're here to listen to that reason, not to just project a reason onto you.
You followed another student that graduated the year before you came on, who also would lead with that. And
that's awesome.
It was a senior who also added, and I'm heading to medical school next year. So she almost beginning, middle, end in 1 minute introduction, this is fine. You will be fine no matter what happens here. I think my dream is to have somebody who was suspended and came back who joined. Hasn't happened yet. Do you remember what might have been the hardest cases for you?
I think the hardest ones, especially that rubbed me in a tough place, was the places where it almost felt like me saying that actually felt like it gave certain people permission to get out of this easier, especially if they were someone who didn't really have a good reason to do what they did. I can't even really remember the cases because there were so many, but I do remember there were cases where it felt pretty obvious that they were trying to make excuses for what they did and not actually acknowledge any wrong. It was constantly put on someone else or another reason, and no responsibility was taken on themselves. And there was a part of me that looked back and I was like, did me saying that I also got in trouble and I'll be fine make them feel like they had more permission to just not feel like they could take or they should take any responsibility for themselves? And I'm hoping that wasn't the case and that there were other things going on, but it was definitely something on my mind every once in a while. So it did make me kind of think, but I felt overall like it was more worth it. There were more benefits than the cost to me sharing what had happened. I almost wish I had that medical school story. Like, that would have been awesome because I'm not going to medical school and I actually don't know what I'm going to do post-grad. But either way, I'm also doing
a successful graduate.
So I don't know. It's kind of hard to think, but there were times where I thought to myself about that as well. And also just taking myself out of the picture. There were tough cases where I had no proof, and I couldn't say anything, but intuitively it just felt so much like they're lying or they're cutting corners, they're not taking responsibility. But what they got in trouble for was actually not very social or anything. It was very independently their choice. And it was a little bit frustrating to work around that. But I also know that happens quite a bit as well. So I wouldn't be the only one in that kind of situation.
Pay acute attention to students whom I fear have never had consequences before, or never been held accountable before. And some of that comes out in them blaming every external thing in the world except their own decision making. I bet you must have been in a couple hearings where I came in, and during the warm up before the student came in, I was like, oh, we're going to have to not be quite as warm.
Yeah.
Because this case, there's a pretty good chance they're going to be suspended.
Yeah.
And if we are like, oh, we're the friendliest, nicest people in the world, I don't want to suddenly then, and you're kicked out of school. So we have to go in a little bit, not that we're not warm.
Yeah.
But were you in
a little
any of
firmer?
those?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was in a couple, I think.
I learned early in my career, just exude a sort of like girl next door, nice. And when I would make the tough decisions, it came as such a shock. I'd have to say, I know I might be smiling or I might be really nice, and I am nice, but this is very serious, and this could end with you going home.
I think the cases that I really remember, because I were in a couple more of them, is when we started a meeting and you said, okay, we can be nice, but this person has been here. This is like the third or fourth time they've been here. So the consequences are going to be high. And I just remember feeling like, oh, where is this conversation even going to go? If this is the fourth time they've been here in the last 2 years, like what's going on? Even if there's a lot going on in their lives, and I believe that it is, so often, this choice is being made over and over, or similar choices are being made after similar talks. So where is their headspace at? What's going to happen? And I do remember coming into some of those feeling like, oh gosh, this is going to be a hard one.
And helping, we had a system with trained support people, helping the support people know if this student even stands a chance, they have got to come in and own what happened and show that they've really thought about strategies to address whatever is going on, or at least be open to the conversation. Because if they come in and deny it, or that is not the way to go here, and having trusted colleagues around campus that could have that tough love talk, I think we got to see the benefits of that.
I think having, especially if it was an academic conduct issue with like a professor, having the professor there was always, I think, a huge help.
Say more about that. My school right now, we do not have the professor in the room. It's me and the student, and I feel so alone. And I do my best, but it is not the same as having a you there, or having their professor who cares about them there, but also cares about the integrity of their class. What can you share for listeners why that was so important?
I think, one, the more people you have in there, and I do want to clarify, not as judges or in a judicial sense, but the more just humans you have from different places in life, which includes, one dean of student conduct, but also could be one peer, one student like myself, and also their professor or, their peer support, whoever it is so much more holistic. It never becomes just about discipline or just about academics, but it becomes so much about their well-being and who they are. And I also realize that so many more professors are way more human than I think students think, because their professor is the one that got them in trouble. So they're like, God, I would never want to meet that professor. It would be like shameful or embarrassing, or, they're going to say whatever. But half the times they come in and they're like, we understand what happened. I get why you did it. You're not the first student. You're like the 50th, quite frankly. In the last 10 years, you're probably like the 100th. You know, this is not new. It's not the end of the world, but I want to know why you did this, because the reality is I do know you cheated. I saw you cheated. There's no way you're getting out of this. But I, as your professor who's actually going to work with you for the rest of the semester, want to know how I can support you. And I think that's so critical, because once you come out of a meeting with us, there's a high chance you won't see us again. Although we would love if you would just talk to us on a day-to-day basis. And hopefully you're not going in for another conduct meeting, hopefully, although it does happen. But you will see your professor again, unless you're just dropping the class or something like that. And your professor is going to be the person who's working with you. And if they know where you're at and why you made a choice, now they're a person on your side to walk you through with it. I will say there are some professors that might not be like that, and it's not for everyone, but I would say the majority, or a very large number, are at least willing to meet the students where they're at and work with them. And that's a game changer in the rest of their semester and their experience.
I remember a couple of professors who, at the pre-hearing part, when I was just trying to learn more details about their syllabus or whatever, oh good Lord, they wanted the hammer to come down on that student. And then they joined the hearing, and during the deliberation would say, do you really have to give them a warning? Oh my gosh, come on.
You were the one who wanted them to get
It was either 0 or 100. But I do think they became more human. I also remember hearing where there was a student, I think from Vietnam, who talked about the shame that a failing grade would bring to his family. And he's, I can't have a C. I can't fail this homework. And the shame that he himself would feel as a person. And I remember asking the two professors who were in the room, one that was part of our committee and one that was his own professor, have you ever failed a class? And then I was like, no, they're going to say they all got straight A's their whole, and of course they had failed a class. But even I put me in the seat of the student, sort of like assuming something about our faculty, who many went to Ivy League schools. And I was projecting this stereotype that they were perfect. And thank God they had some good stories of failure that helped the students see that homework was nothing. Like, what a good learning opportunity this is.
I think we make so many more mistakes than people assume from the outside, or we even try to project, but like, we've all been there. Like, anyone who's in trouble is not a unique case, or, you know, a bad example of a case. They're just another human who made a decision, and they just they got caught and in trouble for it, and are going to have to face consequences. But I think everyone faces consequences for what they do, or they should, hopefully.
It might come from authority figures. Of course. It might come from their peers. It might come in ways you don't even realize.
And like 10 years down the line, you'll forget about it, assuming it wasn't life-changingly big. So,
I hope these bells show up on our microphones, because it's such a collegiate kind of thing. As you think about, like, the next thing for you might be embarking upon a career, graduate school life. Are there things you learned from student conduct that you think are part of you now? Did we say we're educational, and we have to live up to that. Like, do we?
From a conduct perspective and from like a bureaucratic school type of perspective, I think we still have a long way to go, obviously. And every school, I feel lucky to be at F&M that has a more restorative and educational type of conduct system. But I recognize that a lot of colleges, especially bigger universities, don't have that at all. And even for our school, I also think there's cons with being so educational, because sometimes there is someone who makes a serious mistake and they should really get serious consequences for it. But we want to give them the benefit of the doubt, or want to give them space to grow. So I think there's so much that we can grow in, but for me, coming out of all of this personally, I think it's definitely changed me for sure. It's encouraged me. I've always kind of wanted to work with individuals who are under resourced or in places marginalized, or just in places where it's a lot more difficult to be able to reach the dreams that you want or get the resources, the accessibility, and the joy and the happiness, the safety of certain types of nets that are in place. But I think working here has made me so much more sympathetic and empathetic to different people. I was definitely a lot more judgmental of people, I think, before my year at Conduct. And I feel like now it's actually one of the most important traits that I value, that I want to continue to grow, which is to not judge people as they are or like just what they look like. And I know, we always say this, don't judge a book by its cover. But the reality is that we so often do. We see someone smoking a cigarette who has some, we're like, oh, they probably didn't go to college. They probably have an addiction. They're probably, we have all these things to say, even though we also know that might not be true. But still, why else would they be doing that? Or like, there's a lot of assumptions, or if they get in trouble, sometimes you might think, oh, if they got in trouble once, they're going to do it again. But also everyone gets in trouble. Like, why am I just saying that to this one person when I can literally say that to myself? So I think it's just really put people on the same level, like leveling field for me. Even people who are not willing to own up to their mistakes. It's come to a perspective where I just realized they probably come from a background where they've never had to own up to their mistakes. So what is this going to look like? This is not just a flaw of them as a human being. It's so dependent on their experiences, where they've been, how they've been treated by others, and how, they have navigated the world with their privilege or lack thereof, or whatever it might look like. I think it's just given me a lot more humility, and brought so much more of the humanity of others into my life. And now that's truly one of the most important tenets, I think, for me and my growth. I am not all there yet, but I am trying so hard. And especially now in today's political climate with everything that has happened, I think it's become fiercer than ever. And I always think back actually to Conduct when things are going on. And I'm like, guys, some of y'all politicians can learn from 22-year-olds. Like, what has happened? Have you guys degenerated over the years? What is with so much judgment, so much projection, just so much? I just think we need to be more human. And Conduct was the best place for me to experience that on such a visceral, human level, not just talk about it, but to be part of the process, literally. So yeah, again, I'm really grateful. I mean, it was a journey, to say the least. I've been in some pretty low places and some pretty high places through that. And now I'm no longer serving in Conduct as well, trying to graduate and do other things. But it was definitely a life-changing experience for me. Got to meet people and stories that I never would have expected to have encountered. Yeah.
You talk like a dean of students that I wish I had had when I was a student. Yoanna Lee, this was such a pleasure. Thank you for participating in Ms. Behavior. I can't wait to see what happens next for you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. It was a privilege.
Ms. Behavior is written and produced by Colette Shaw and Kurt Doan. Theme music was written and performed by Kevin MacLeod from incompetech.com. You can contact Ms. Behavior at msbehaviorcollege@gmail.com. That's msbehaviorcollege@gmail.com.